Tolani stood outside Donna's door with two bags of groceries in her hands. She had tomatoes, peppers, fresh fish from the market. She had woken up that morning thinking about what to cook for him. She had taken a bus across Lagos with two heavy bags because Donat's car was in the shop and she didn't want him eating outside food again. She put her key in the lock. It did not turn. She tried again. Slower, nothing. She could hear something inside. Music, movement. Someone was in there. She knocked, no answer. She knocked again, silence. Tolani stood there for a moment. She looked at the key in her hand. She looked at the door. She set both bags of groceries down carefully on the floor outside the door, picked up her handbag, and walked away down the corridor. She did not look back. Hello, guys. You're welcome to Faith is by More, where every story is real, every lesson is in, and God always has a final say. Tolani Williams was 23 years old when she met Donald. 23, still fresh, still full of the kind of hope that hasn't been tested yet. She had a small catering business that was just beginning to find its feet. Small events, office parties, birthday orders that kept her phone buzzing on weekends. She was good at what she did. Actually, good is the wrong word. She was gifted. There is a difference between someone who can cook and someone whose food makes people stop talking mid-sentence. Tolani was the second one. Her jollof had a reputation before she did. Her pepper soup made grown men call their mothers to compare. She had plans, a proper commercial kitchen, branded packaging, corporate client. She could see the future clearly. It was right there, just ahead of her, waiting for her to walk into it. Then she met Donald, and for 8 years, she forgot to keep walking. Donald Balogun was 27 years old when he walked into Tolani's life. Calm, focused, the kind of man who seemed to have everything figured out. He made Tolani feel safe. And when you are 23 and trying to build something from nothing, safe feels like everything. The first year was good. He was attentive. He called. He showed up. He told her she was special. By the second year, the calling had reduced a little. By the third year, Tolani was calling more than he was. But she told herself this was normal. Relationships settle. People get comfortable. This was just what long term looked like. But there was something she refused to look at too directly. Something Sandra had noticed from year one. Donald did not like to be seen with Tolani, not in an obvious way, not in a way you could point to and say, this is the problem right there. But if they were at a mutual friends gathering, Donald would arrive separately. If someone was taking photo, he would step slightly out of the frame. If his work colleagues were around, Tolani was introduced as a friend, just a friend. After 3 years, Nina sat across from Tolani at lunch and asked her one question. When last did Donald introduce you as his girlfriend? Not to us, to everyone outside our circle. Tolani opened her mouth, closed it. Nina picked up her fork and continued eating. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Sandra Okafor had been Tolani's friend since university. She was 31 now, same age as Tolani, and she ran a fashion design workshop in Lekki with 4 staff and more orders than she could handle. Sandra had built that business from one sewing machine in her bedroom. She knew what it looked like when a woman was pouring her energy into the wrong place. She had been watching Tolani give and get nothing back for years. Tolani, Sandra said one afternoon, sitting in Tolani's kitchen, watching her iron Donna's shirts. How many of your own shirts have you ironed this week? Tolani thought about it. I haven't had time. Sandra watched her fold the shirt carefully. But you have had time to iron his. Sandra, I am just asking a question. Nina Adeyemi was 30 years old and she planned events for her living. She was the calm one, the one who kept mental record of everything, date, patterns, timeline. Where Sandra said everything she was thinking out loud, Nina waited, watched, and when she finally spoke, it was usually one sentence that landed like a bucket of cold water. The two of them together were the best thing that had ever happened to Tolani. They were also, for a long time, the most ignored. Because every time they raised an eyebrow about Donald, Tolani had an explanation. He was busy. He was going through something. He just needed time. Time for what? Sandra asked once. Tolani, this man had years of time. At what point does time become an excuse? You don't understand him like I do, Tolani said. Sandra looked at Nina. Nina looked at Sandra. They said nothing, but they kept watching. This is what love looked like for Tolani for 8 years. It looked like waking up early on Saturday mornings to cook and clean Donut's apartment before he woke up. It looked like cancelling our own catering orders when Donut's office needed food for an event. It is networking, babe. You will get clients from it. And somehow, the clients never came. It looked like driving across Lagos in traffic to drop his dry cleaning, running to the pharmacy when he had a headache, spending her whole morning on groceries for his kitchen because I will pay you back never quite happened. It looked like cooking for his mother's birthday every year, catering his friend's wedding for free, making food for his colleague's retirement party because Donald had told them his friend was a good caterer and he wanted to help her get exposure. Exposure. 8 years of exposure. Tolani's catering business should have been thriving. Instead, it was the same size it had been when she was 23 because every time it was about to grow, Donald needed something and Tolani said yes. Sandra watched all of this and called it what it was. Tolani, you are his caterer, his cleaner, his errand runner, and his housekeeper. The only difference between you and paid staff is that paid staff go home at the end of the day and collect a salary. What do you collect? Sandra, this is not fair. What do you collect? Tolani, silence. Love, Tolani said quietly. Sandra opened her mouth, closed it, picked up her bag, and went home. She called Nina from the car. This girl is going to break my heart. I know, Nina said. Just keep showing up. By year 6, the signs were no longer quiet. Donald's calls became shorter. His replies became slower. He was always in a meeting, always tired, always, I will call you back, that turned into a text 4 hours later, saying, been busy, talk tomorrow. Tomorrow would come and go, no call. Tolani noticed. Of course, she noticed. She was not a foolish woman, but she had 6 years already given. 6 years of Saturday mornings, groceries runs, and ironed shirt. She was not ready to walk away from that. So she explained things away. Work, pressure. His mother was sick for a while. Business stress. He just needed time. Then came the question he had been asking for years, and the answer that was always the same. Donald, when are we getting married? Sigh. Tola, I am very busy right now. You are always busy. That is not fair. You know what I am dealing with at work? Donald, we have been together for 6 years. And does that mean I have to rush? Marriage is a serious thing. I am not asking you to rush. I am asking you to give me a date. Any date, something to hold. Long pause. Let's talk about this later. I have a call coming in. Later never came. Sandra was sitting with Tolani when this conversation happened. Tolani didn't know she was on speaker. When the call ended, Sandra looked at her friend for a long moment. Tolani, don't. I am not saying anything. Good. Sandra picked up her drink, put it down, picked it up again. I am just going to ask one question. Sandra, one question. If Donald called you right now and said he needed you to cook for something, how fast would you pick up? Tolani didn't answer. That is what I thought, Sandra said quietly. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Tolani had been to the market, fresh tomatoes, peppers, fish. She had decided she was going to cook Donald's favorite meal, show up at his door, remind him what they had. She was going to fight for this relationship the way she always had, with food and love, and showing up. She stood outside his door with two heavy bags, put her key in the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again and again. She could hear music inside, movement. Someone was home. She knocked, no answer. Knocked again, nothing. Tolani set the bags down slowly and walked away. She sat on the bus on the way home and stared out the window for 45 minutes. When she got home, she called Donald. He picked up on the fifth ring. Hi, what's up? Donald, my key doesn't work. A pause, too long. Oh yeah, I changed the lock. There were some security issues in the building. I was going to tell you when. Soon, I have just been busy. Donald, I was standing outside your door with groceries. You were inside. Another pause. I didn't hear you knock. The music was loud. Tolani said okay. She always said okay. But that night, she lay in bed and let herself think the thought she had been refusing to think for months. He changed the lock and didn't tell me. She called Sandra. He changed his lock. Sandra was quiet for 3 full seconds. Then, I am coming over. Before we continue, has anyone ever had a moment where something small happened and you just knew that something bigger was wrong, but you talked yourself out of it anyway? Drop it in the comments, just one line. Let's continue. Sandra had told Tolani they needed to talk, that there were things being said that she needed to hear from people who loved her. Tolani came anyway. Nina had booked a quiet corner table. She had already ordered drinks by the time Tolani arrived. Sandra waited until the food came. Then she put down her fork. Tolani, we love you. That is the only reason we are doing this. Tolani looked between them. Doing what? Sandra went first. You have been with this man for 8 years. 8. You cook for him. You clean for him. You iron his shirt. You run his errands. You cater his event for free. You show up at his door with groceries. And the man changed his lock and didn't tell you. She leaned forward. Tolani, has your village people tied your destiny to Donna's front door? Because I am genuinely asking. Tolani opened her mouth. Nina raised one finger. When Nina raised one finger, you waited. I want to ask you something professional. I plan events. I know timelines. I know when something is moving towards a destination and when something is just cycling the same spot. She paused. Donald is cycling. He has been cycling for years. A man who wants to marry you finds a date. Busy is not a reason. Busy is an excuse. Wearing a tie. He loves me, Tolani said. We know, Sandra said. That is not what we are saying. Then what are you saying? We are saying, Nina said carefully, that love without a plan is just a feeling. And feelings don't put a ring on your finger. Tolani went home that night and called Donald. He didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. He texted back 40 minutes later. Tired. Long day. Talk tomorrow. She put her phone face down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in 8 years, she didn't have any explanation ready. It was Nina who found out first, not because she was looking. She wasn't. It came through work, the way things like this always do. A colleague mentioned Donald's name in passing. Engaged, getting married soon. The invitations had already been sent out. Nina sat very still at her desk for a full minute. Then she called Sandra. I need to tell you something. Tell me, not on the phone. Come to my office. Sandra arrived in 20 minutes. Nina showed her what she had found, the name, the date, the venue. Sandra read it twice, looked up. Does Tolani know? No. Sandra stood up immediately. I am going to her. Sandra, Nina, this woman has given this man 8 years of her life. She has cooked and cleaned and shown up and shown up and shown up. She ironed his shirt. She stood outside his door with groceries and he changed the lock. She deserves to know the truth. Nina was already picking up her bag. I said I am going to her. Sandra said, I know. Nina said, I am coming with you. Tolani was in her kitchen when Sandra called. Tolani, come outside. Sandra, I am in the middle of a catering order. Tolani, something in Sandra's voice. Come outside right now. Tolani wiped her hands, walked out. Sandra and Nina were both sitting in the car, engine running. That alone told her something. Nina handed her a piece of paper. Quietly, no dramatic presentation, just the facts. Tolani read it again, folded the paper, handed it back, looked straight ahead through the windscreen. 8 years, she said, not to them, just out loud into the air. Sandra opened her mouth. Tolani raised one hand. I am okay. She got out of the car, went back inside, turned the stove back on. Sandra and Nina sat outside her gate for 20 minutes without speaking. Then Sandra said quietly, she went back to stir the pot. Nina didn't answer. They drove away in silence. Tolani went to Donald the next morning. She dressed carefully. If she was going to end 8 years, she was going to look like herself while she did it. Donald opened the door. He looked surprised to see her. She walked in without being invited. She sat down in the sitting room, the same sitting room she had cleaned more times than she could count. The same kitchen she could see from where she sat, the kitchen where she had cooked for him, for his guests, for his mother, for everyone except herself. She looked at him. Is it true? Donald was quiet for too long. Tolani, yes or no? Silence. She nodded slowly. Was it ever going to be me, Donald? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Tolani stood up, picked up her bag. Thank you, she said. Donald frowned. For what? For finally giving me something I cannot explain away. She walked out. He did not follow. That night, Tolani sat on her bedroom floor for a long time, not crying, not angry, just sitting. She thought about 23, how young she had been, how full of plans. She thought about the catering business that should have been twice the size it was. She thought about the orders she had cancelled, the clients she had kept waiting, the Saturdays she had spent in Donald's kitchen instead of her own. She thought about how many times she had almost brought this to God, almost, but she always pulled back at the last moment because she was afraid of what he might say. Because what if she prayed and God said no? What if she laid it before him and he confirmed what she already knew? That this was not it, that this man was not the one, that the years were gone and there was nothing left to hold. She had been so afraid of that answer that she had never asked the question. She got on her knees. Lord, her voice was quiet. I was afraid you would say no, so I never asked you. I just stayed and hoped and explained everything away. I gave this man 8 years. I didn't give you one honest conversation about it. She stopped, swallowed. I am sorry. I am sorry for not trusting you with this. I am sorry for being more afraid of your answer than of wasting my own life. She stayed there for a long time. Nothing dramatic happened. No sign, no feeling, no sudden warmth, just silence. It was a different kind of silence, the kind that feels like an answer even when no words have been spoken. When she got up, her face was wet, but something inside her felt clean for the first time in years. Sandra arrived at Tolani's door the next morning with fabric samples and an attitude. We are redesigning your catering brand today, right now. Sit down. Tolani sat down, professional, sharp, with your name on it, not Donald's name, not his company's name, yours. Nina arrived 30 minutes later with her laptop open. I have 3 potential bookings for you: a corporate dinner in Victoria Island, a product launch in Ikeja, and she paused for dramatic effect, a private event for a senator's wife who specifically asked for a recommendation, and I recommended you. Tolani stared at her. A senator's wife? A pepper soup review will change your life, Nina said calmly. So please, do not undercook the crayfish. Sandra looked up from her fabric. She always undercooks the crayfish when she is nervous. I do not. Tolani, the Christmas party, 2021. Tolani was quiet. Cook the crayfish properly, Nina said, and went back to her laptop. Tolani's phone started ringing for the right reasons. The corporate dinner went well. The product launch went better. The senator's wife called Nina personally after the event and said she wanted Tolani for her daughter's introduction ceremony in December. Tolani hired her first staff member in month 2, her second in month 4. Sandra delivered the uniform on a Thursday morning, structured, sharp, with Tolani's business name crested on the chest pocket in clean gold lettering. Tolani put one on and stood in front of a mirror for a long moment. She looked like herself, the self that had been waiting quietly behind 8 years of someone else's needs. You look like a businesswoman, Sandra said from behind her. I am a businesswoman, Tolani said. Sandra smiled. Say it again. I am a businesswoman. Louder, Sandra. Louder, Tolani. I am a businesswoman. From the kitchen, Nina called out without looking up from her laptop. The neighbors can hear you. Good, Sandra shouted back. Let them hear her. Tolani laughed, a real laugh, full and unguarded and free. It had been a long time since she had laughed like that. 6 months later, Tolani Williams stood outside her first proper commercial kitchen space and watched 2 men hang a signboard on the wall. Sandra was taking photos from 17 different angles and arguing with the workmen about whether the sign was level. It was level. Sandra just needed something to direct. Nina was standing with a stopwatch, timing how long the installation was taking and periodically announcing that they were behind schedule. Tolani stood back and looked at her name on the board. She thought about the 23 years old who had met a man and slowly handed him her time, her energy, her Saturdays, her plan, her keys, and received silence in return. She thought about standing outside a locked door with grocery bags in her hands. She thought about the night she finally got on her knees and stopped being afraid of God's answer. And she thought about how quietly, without drama, without thunder, everything had started moving the moment she let go. Not that moment Donald left, not the moment she confronted him, the moment she stopped explaining things away and got honest with God. That was the moment things changed. Tolani, Sandra called, come and take a photo. 1 second, Tolani said. She looked at her name on the sign. One more time, 31 years old, business finally growing, name finally on the wall, life finally moving in the right direction. She smiled. Not that, this. That was all God had been trying to say. Not that, this. She just hadn't been still enough to hear it. She walked over to where Sandra and Nina were standing and squeezed herself between them. Ready? Sandra said, holding up her phone. Ready, Tolani said. Nina said, without looking up from her stopwatch. Smile quickly. We are still 7 minutes behind schedule. They laughed, all 3 of them, loud and real and unbothered. The photo Nina posted that evening had one caption. She waited on God. God did not disappoint. Until next time on Faith Tales by Mo, stay prayerful, stay guided, stay focused. God bless you.